And we should be ready to get started. So let me see what you got.
I think this is it, right? This
No,
is what okay, so
that would just email.
well,
But we'll do it a break because we'll go over a few things before we get started, and then let me get you an account for the break time. So welcome to the basic bookkeeping class. My name is Dan Guerra, and I'm the instructor for the class. So as I mentioned, the classes are, we do them on ground here, but they're also simulcast. We're streaming out if you want to take it online, so you can do that. The other way you can take it is if you can't make the sessions, every day we take these sessions, they're all recorded, like we're being recorded right now, and each morning you'll get an invitation for that day's class plus a link to the prior day's class. So that way you can always watch and review if you miss something, or if you missed a class, you can get caught up. So that way nobody's left behind. For the people on video, I do turn off my camera, but I keep the screens going just because our bandwidth, I don't know, sometimes we have too much going on. So it helps stream things. So you'll see me coming in and out, but you should always be able to hear me. And you should also be able to see the screen behind me. Like right now, you'll see the invitation, and you will need this. So you will need this email when we get started into the program. But I wanted to tell you about our class first. So our class has been running here for quite a few years, and we basically are going to take the whole concept of bookkeeping and starting from scratch. That means you don't have to know anything. Just get started. We're going to be using a program called QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a very popular bookkeeping program, usually for small to medium businesses. Large businesses can afford to buy these big software packages or hire accountants or whatever else. And so QuickBooks is primarily designed for people who have a business but don't want to mess with the bookkeeping side. They just want to do their business and have the computer do the rest for the bookkeeping. And that's how QuickBooks got its claim to fame. So that's the main program we'll be using. QuickBooks is on the web, meaning in the cloud, somewhere, I don't know where this information is stored. Could be Arizona, they got a lot of server farms there, or who knows where. With the internet, it doesn't matter. It's always accessible to you, mostly. And all you have to do is log in and you're good to go. So that's the good part about it. The bad part about it is if your internet is down for some reason, then of course you can't connect. And that does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. So once you become experts in QuickBooks and you decide you want to use it, you may have to choose whether you want to install it on your computer or use this on the web. So like I said, you get a lot of convenience on the web, but I still have a copy on my computer just because I don't trust things. Very untrusting. So in case we have crashes, our internet's down or something, I can still do things. Like it'd be really bad if on a Friday, 4 o'clock, the internet goes down and you got payroll to run, right? No way to do it unless you have it on your computer. So that's just a couple of options. The way the class works, as I mentioned, all the class sessions are recorded. You get to keep your license for QuickBooks for a year. So you got till January 2024 now to use QuickBooks. It is a full version of QuickBooks, meaning if you wanted to, you can run a company on this. We are going to set up a class company, right? A temporary one. And we're going to make all kinds of mistakes with it. If you really are interested in QuickBooks and you want to see what it would be like, you're allowed to set up 3 different companies on your QuickBooks software. So you can actually set up, if you've got a little small business or something, set it up on there and run it and see how it works. So actually that's how QuickBooks became so famous, was they used to give you a free disc back in the old days when you get CDs in the mail. And it was free 30 days, complete version to try. Now, what happened is if people tried it, once you got all the information in there at the end of the 30 days, you're kind of hooked. Because, do I really want to cancel and start with another program or what? So what, people said, I already got it, I'll pay for it. When I was little, we went to a pet store and they had the same kind of deal with puppies. If you bought a puppy, you could take it home and you had a week to bring it back. And I was thinking, really? Like, how many puppies did they ever get back? It sounds great, but I'll bet nobody ever brought a puppy back because, you're hooked. And that's what QuickBooks did. The other thing they did is they made the interface, meaning the screens that you use, very intuitive. In fact, the company is called Intuit. So, there are little buttons and pictures and then arrows, and it tells you if you do this, okay, now you got to do that. And that way you didn't have to know a lot about bookkeeping. Like I said, it was for small businesses who didn't want to do bookkeeping. They just wanted to do their business and keep everything organized. So it's very useful that way. The program they beat out was called Peachtree. Their Peachtree is actually still out there, but it was menu driven, meaning you do a drop down list, you see this menu, you have to know what to do, and you have to know each step as you went along. So it's primarily for bookkeepers and accountants who already had training. Well, over time, QuickBooks beat them out, and lo and behold, Peachtree now looks almost exactly like QuickBooks. So they copied the idea, but they never regained their status. They are still used, like I said, that's even the larger accounting firms will still use that. But even QuickBooks now has expanded. So there's lots of options. If you learn the principles in this class, you can apply them to any software program. It's just a matter of how you organize it. So it's kind of very useful. As I mentioned earlier, the class runs Monday through Thursday. It's 4 days a week. 8 o'clock is our end time. So it starts from 6 and goes to 8. Somewhere something went out that said 9, so that was a boo-boo. Sorry. Don't want to scare everybody. So 2 hours. I got to go get that typo fixed. So just 2 hours. And then at the end of the class, you'll receive a certificate of completion if you've completed the class. There's no charge. This program is run through the state, California Education Department, and they're doing it to try to build skills in the area. When we're done with this, if you want to, you can also take the advanced QuickBooks, where we take everything we've done here and then build on it some more. One thing with bookkeeping and QuickBooks is there's always more to learn. And even if you think you got it down, somebody will come up with something that, I have no idea, and I got to go find it. And one of the advantages to QuickBooks, too, is they built up these bunch of users, and they have this user board, this website, that you can go in and ask any question. Now, it's free. So remember, you're getting free bookkeeping advice. So do take that with a grain of salt. Like if your life depends on getting this right, you might actually want to talk to a live bookkeeper and pay a little money. But it's really good. I mean, most of the times, any problem you'll have, somebody else has had at some point. And it's posted on there, and somebody else gave an answer, and somebody else said, no, you're wrong, you need to do it this way. And they, if you follow the thread, you can see how it all got worked out and how to fix your problem. So that's really great. That's very helpful. Because like I said, odd things do come up all the time. Also, if you really want to get into it, that's a good board to join, because you really do get a chance to see what everybody else is doing out there in the real world. And the more and more companies use QuickBooks, and not just companies, nonprofits, or even people who are doing, the gig economy, their side jobs. They call them side hustles. So I don't know if you know this, but if you do Uber, Uber is a job, and you are self-employed. In fact, I had a big fight with the state over whether or not the drivers are self-employed or not. And right now, it seems like, yes, they are. So that means every Uber driver is a business owner. That means they need to register, they need to pay taxes, and they need to file as if they had a small business. And a lot of people don't realize that when they sign up. And then all of a sudden they get hit with these tax bills, and they're like, what? Where'd my money go? So one of the good things is, if you do something like that, there are certain deductions you can take. The government doesn't say, hey, don't forget, here's all these deductions you can take. They'll just say, send us your returns, we'll make it out for you, and we'll take our best guess. And of course, they leave out the deductions. So if you keep good records, you can actually save a lot of money in taxes. So that's one of the things that people don't realize. Also, have you ever heard of the website called Etsy? There's a number of these, and they're just basically people doing crafts, mostly like crafts at home, and they want to sell them, and they sell them online. Well, you could do that. Well, Etsy now has it set up so you can actually use QuickBooks with their program, and so all the bookkeeping is done in QuickBooks, and you sell your stuff and don't have to worry about the bookkeeping because everything gets downloaded. End of the quarter, send in your taxes, boom, you're done. So that's kind of handy too. More and more things are becoming integrated. Pretty soon now, because we're in January, you're going to start seeing, if you haven't already, commercials for another one of Intuit's products called TurboTax. So TurboTax was bought by Intuit to work with QuickBooks, but also on its own. You can just buy it if you even don't have QuickBooks. But if you do have QuickBooks and you've kept all of your information on there, when you load up TurboTax, you push the button that says import data, sucks it all up, you're done. It'll do your taxes for you. It might ask you like 1 or 2 questions, but essentially it does the work for you. So that's pretty handy too. There is another program, QuickBooks sold it, but it still works. It's called Quicken. Quicken, instead of QuickBooks, is designed for home use, like home budgeting. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I find out I'm broke and like, wait, what happened? Where did all that money go? And it's easy just day to day to forget where the money goes out. Well, Quicken can help you capture that. And they'll even give you projections and suggestions and savings, and if you get into it, investments and all kinds of stuff. So it can really be helpful and actually kind of scary because like, we spent that much on movies? Really? Can't believe it. But over a month, if we like take the kids out to the movie, okay, just once. Oh, there's another one? Yeah, okay, we'll go. And then, at the end, it's like, well, that's where the money went. I don't know if you've seen ticket prices of movies and popcorn and everything else. Well, one thing after the other adds up. That's what the computer can do. I'm bragging about how smart the computers are, but they still aren't smart enough to work without people. Getting close, but still not. And so that's where the human side comes in. And you'll see this. Like if you're working with QuickBooks, if it has a mistake on an invoice and says a customer owes 1 cent, right? It'll generate the paper, and if you have it automatically set up, it'll go through the mail, and you have to pay postage on it, which is certainly more than 1 cent. And the computer thinks that's just fine, right? They owe, but it's 1 cent or $20. They owe us money. It doesn't make a judgment call on that. Well, that's where the person can come in and say, you know what? We're writing off that 1 cent. I am not going to mess with paperwork and call them up and have to deal with all this for 1 penny. But that's why you need the person there to monitor all this. So, like I said, the computers are getting better and more, getting kind of scary, but they still need that human element, somebody to kind of give it some common sense. So any questions so far? Yeah, the class is pretty straightforward. So one of the things you're going to need to do is come up with a company you would like to have for class. And it needs to be a retail business. So what retail means is you buy something for a low price and sell it for a high price. So it's like a convenience store. Or you can do a grocery store or something like that. The only thing is don't do things that you buy like in bulk and then break up into smaller things. So like if you want to sell oranges, I buy them by the case, but I sell them individually. Don't do that now. You can do that in QuickBooks, but we're going to try to keep it simple. Do it something more like a little novelty store. If you're selling little knickknacks. My grandmother had a whole bunch of little Hummels. I mean, they have people, that's all they sell. So those would be great, little Hummel statues. If you want to do just a variety store, you can do that. But basically, you're not going to be assembling things. You're just going to buy something, turn around and resell it. Okay? So that's a start. Now, later on, if you get into manufacturing, that's something you can certainly set up in QuickBooks. We had a student, her son invented this video game controller. And what he did, he figured out how to make it cheat. So, like, it had an auto repeat for shooting games or something. So he was selling those. He was making a lot of money. But she needed to keep track of all the parts because he was a young kid. He wanted to do these video game controllers, but didn't keep track of all those parts coming in, what he was short, and so he'd run out of screws, and the whole thing couldn't be sold until they got the screws in. So she set that up on inventory, and it worked. And it shows whenever he sells one, okay, now you need to restock on these particular items, and it made it a lot better, a lot more convenient. So there is a lot of different ways you can use QuickBooks. If you ever work for an attorney, they may be using QuickBooks, or a doctor's office. Excuse me, those are more service-type businesses, and they can use QuickBooks just fine as well. So kind of just start your mind rolling. It doesn't have to be, a big deal. You can just pick any store you want. Like I'll call mine Dan's Fans or something, and I sell fans. You can always change it later on, and you can always add. And in fact, in the real world, many businesses will do that. They'll start off selling one thing, and then they'll add something, and that becomes a bigger hit. that's where the money is. Forget the other stuff. I'm just going to sell this. And they'll, change from one thing to the other. I don't know if you've heard of Berkshire Hathaway. It's a guy is a very brilliant investor, but he bought that. And now Berkshire Hathaway refers to investment company. Well, originally it was yarn. They were doing yarn and making clothes. And that's how that business completely changed over the years. So that can happen all the time. Tomorrow, we are also going to have to come up with 5 customers. You're going to need 5 things to sell and 5 vendors. So we'll get more into that as we go along. But just start thinking about that too. The customers can be completely made up. If you want to make up names and addresses, that's fine. If you want to put in relatives, you can. You can actually print out an invoice to your kids. You want to give your kid, here, you owe me $20,000. Here's your invoice. Give them a heart attack. So you can use people if you want to. Just keep in mind the information is secure. Like I said, this is a full version of QuickBooks. So QuickBooks treats it like it's all secure, but I wouldn't use my own Social Security number. Unless you're setting up a real business. We'll get into that when you need to do that. But if you're doing it just for class, don't use like that kind of personal information, just in case. Okay. So we do that so it makes it more familiar to you as to what you're selling. Keep in mind that since we only have 3 weeks here, we're going to start with 5 items. If you ever want to add any items yourself, you're always welcome to add more. Sometimes you get kind of bored with just 5 items. And the more you put in, the more you get to work it. And then one of the interesting things is QuickBooks will also tell you your sales and which items are the most popular, which customers are the most spending the most money. There's one thing to spend money, but there's nothing to make profit. Meaning, somebody might spend $1,000 in your shop, but if they buy something like, say, a computer, computers, they never make any money, right? Because it's so cutthroat. In order to sell a computer, you basically have to get the price down to you're almost selling at a cost. Where do they make their money? Those warranties, when they say, how would you like a 2-year warranty for only $3 or whatever? That's where the profit comes in. And then you got to protect your computer. So here's a power strip. Let's get you one of those. Oh, you need a better mouse, and all that kind of stuff. That's where the profit is. So that in that case, just because they spend a lot of money at your store doesn't mean that's very profitable. So QuickBooks will also do that. It can tell you the difference between profitability and maybe some things where you're just scraping by and getting lucky on. A lot of times you'll see different strategies, and QuickBooks can help you with those too. That's what these numbers are good for. It's called analytics. And if you're looking for a great thing to do as a job, that is a great thing right now. Every company needs analytics. Basically, somebody who can take the data and come to conclusions about it. So, like what are the most profitable products? What's the future of those products? Is everybody else selling them, or are we seem to be the exclusive person in Patterson? Those kinds of things. That you need to get the data first, but once you've got it, that can tell you a lot. And like I said, that's pretty good money out there for somebody who can do that, and you can do it from home, right? So we'll go over the different aspects of jobs that are available if you do learn your QuickBooks, and if you want to continue with it. We did have a student. She took the class for QuickBooks. She got an interview at a car dealership, and it was for a receptionist. And she went in, and they said, "We see in your resume you took a class in QuickBooks. We've had this on the shelf for like 2 years. Can you help us set it up?" And she was a very confident person. She said, "Sure, I can. No problem." And then she came to us. She says, "Whoa, they're going to make me do QuickBooks. What am I going to do?" I said, "Well, if you ever get stuck, you can always come back to us. We'll help you as much as we can. But remember, you're starting off the same place they are. They don't know any more than you do. You actually have a leg up because you're familiar with the screens and things, and you're going to learn together." So they did, and they liked it so much they sent her out to the classes at the junior college for more extensive bookkeeping. So they had an in-house bookkeeper. She graduated. Then you know what happened? She quit. She found a better job because she's got all these credentials now, and she found somebody who'd pay her more. And so it's fair. The car company could have said, "Oh yeah, we'll match that. We want to keep you." Well, or they could say, "Well, can't afford that," and then good for her to go on. So that's the way it works. All right. Again, any questions so far? Let me close that door. We have It's coming for the, Pardon me?
I said that hopefully we'll find a job like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Well, I mean, that's really, whether the company pays for it or not, it always pays to keep learning new stuff. Because, even like now, when we started doing QuickBooks, it was all basically on the computer. Every computer had to be installed with a copy of QuickBooks. And then the only way you could take it home is if you put it on a thumb drive and take it around. Now, of course, it's in the cloud. And the layout, even on the online version of QuickBooks compared to the desktop version, looks different. It's a different feel. But once you get used to it, it's the same materials. It's just found in different places and organized differently. Okay?
But you can still do the desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. That's because you're always going to use customers, you're always going to use vendors, you're always going to use items, and they're always used in the same way. It's just a matter of how they've displayed it on the screen. I will say the desktop version has fewer ads for QuickBooks than the online versions, and you'll see them. There's actually and I shouldn't call them ads because it has such a bad connotation, but it's offers for additional services. That's an ad. But for QuickBooks, it kind of makes sense. So one thing it can do is it will offer you to print checks. If you need paper checks, it'll print them for you. That's neat. You just click a button. It can charge your credit card. It can automatically put in your account number for the checks. It knows what check number to start at. Does all that work for you. Very convenient, right? But if you use Costco, it's a lot cheaper. It's like half. So sure, it's convenient, but at the same time, a little more expensive. So it's still on the screens though, and you'll still see it, and it will remind you once in a while, would you like to buy? There's a setting, when we get into the settings, you can turn most of that off, but things like that will pop up. In the advanced class, we get more into payroll. So that one is usually a big headache. So that sometimes a company will have a whole department just dedicated to payroll, even with just a few, 4 or 5 employees, because payroll is pretty complicated. People are complicated, and so payroll becomes complicated. So one of the things you'll see on here is you can use this for payroll now. You have 1 year. And then one of the things that they do remind you with a little ad is to subscribe to their payroll service. If you are going to use this for payroll, definitely, that's one thing I would buy, because payroll is constantly changing. And you hear it in the news all the time. We're going to change the tax rates. We're going to give everybody a tax break so they'll have more money. So they did it a couple years ago during COVID. Well, what they did is they changed the tax schedule. So you were, and over a year, you weren't taxed less, but the withholdings, if you worked for a company, went down. What that meant was you owed more at the end of the year. But for each month, you had more money in your pocket. Well, try to calculate that for 300 people. QuickBooks can. And it automatically does updates, and it automatically keeps track of it, and it's really good about that. And when I first started with Community Business College, we had even just the state of California's manual. It's that thick, little writing, and it tells you all the different things about payroll that happen. And here's one circumstance. If you have an employee, and that employee has a lien against them, it could be child support, could be a federal tax lien, and it could be a lawsuit. So that's 3 things. Let's say they got 3 things. You were supposed to deduct from their check, by law, a certain amount, right, for each one. However, the total amount can't go over a certain percentage, because you can't take all their money, they won't work anymore, right? So it can't, if they have 3 different things from 3 different agencies, the total can't be over a certain amount. Well, how do you divvy it? You have to know the priority. So instead of, in the manuals, you have to look it up and do the cross index and all kinds of tables. On QuickBooks, it's all done for you. It knows, and it's pretty good about it. So that's really handy. The things like that, like I mentioned, Congress and even the state are constantly changing. Like even now, they're trying to change the top tax brackets. So rather than having to follow all that, if you subscribe to that QuickBooks service, QuickBooks will tell you, boom, got an update, you want to see it? And you can say, nah, forget it, I trust you. Or you can say yes, I like to say yes, because it will tell you all the states, because potentially your company could be serving or could have locations in every state in the union, right? If you're really good, that's pretty good. So it gives you all the updates, and all the updates are in the software. However, the only ones that pertain to me is the ones in California right now, because I don't have that big a company. So I might just want to look at California. But also I'm kind of nosy. So I want to see what Hawaii's up to. Hawaii changed. Oh, what do they do? Let's see. And oh, wow. Like one that's coming for California, but not the other states, is we tended to overspend on the unemployment insurance during COVID. So they're out of money. So the only way to get it is to go to employers and say, we're going to raise the unemployment insurance tax to try to fill the coffers again. So there's a proposal right now to do just that. Well, when that happens, you have to change your payments into that system. QuickBooks does it automatically. Doesn't make it any less painless, but it at least takes out some of the hassle. So any other ideas on using QuickBooks right now? Yeah, it's kind of neat. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into payroll, but some companies will use QuickBooks for everything but payroll, and then they'll send payroll out to an agency and have it done that way. And that's perfectly fine. You can turn different components of QuickBooks on and off, and never have to use payroll if you don't want to. To me, it's personal preference, but I would try to keep everything all together. But sometimes, they've been with them for, is it, keep wanting to say ADT. It's ADP. ADP, they've been around for a long time and have a lot of clients. And just, by the fact that that's the inertia, we've always gone with them, let's just stay with them. Great. Okay, so the other thing we do is as we hit the 1 hour, we do a 10-minute break. 10-minute break every hour. Gives you a chance to just walk around and stretch if you have any questions. And then we'll come back from that. So we're getting pretty close. When we come back from break, please do have up this invitation. If you've already done this, some people kind of jump ahead. They, invitation, I'll take it. So accept it, that's fine. But just in case you didn't, I'll walk you through it so you can see how it's done. Because like I said, you're not supposed to have any kind of background for this class. And we'll just walk you through and see how it works. And then we will have to set up our company today. So you got to make a decision of what retail company you'd like to have. And like I said, it can be general things. It can be specific things. If you're into like the beauty supplies or even like t-shirts, there's a lot of different products. And, even like a nail polish will have different shades. If you're doing QuickBooks for real, you need to enter those in individually one at a time. So I mentioned t-shirts. If you're selling t-shirts, you'd have a men's large yellow, men's medium yellow, women's large yellow, women's small, whatever size, each one of those, if you want to track them separately, has to be a separate listing in QuickBooks. So that can really build up if you're trying to do it that way. If you do want to experiment with a real company, there are ways to download the company's data files. So what they do, I don't know if you notice in the grocery stores, like there's thousands of products and all kinds of new stuff coming all the time, like blue tackies. I can't believe tacky chips are now in blue, but they're buying them. My granddaughter, she's always got blue fingers and a blue tongue. So see, and when the new products come out, all the stores have to update their system. So what the companies do is they generate an electronic file that they can send you, and you can load it in your QuickBooks, and all those new products automatically pop up. And then if you want to modify the pricing and things, you can. So that saves a lot of time. It didn't used to be that way. But now it's really convenient. So any questions about your company? Got an idea? Yeah, if you're not sure, just say convenience store. Great. And but just keep in mind, if you do food, if you decide to sell food like donuts, little packages of donuts, we are going to tax them just so we can collect sales tax. In California, food, whatever counts as food, is not taxable, right? Unless you heat it. I don't know if you know this. When you go to Subway, they'll ask you, do you want it toasted, your sandwich toasted? If you say no, they're selling you groceries, according to the state of California. Basically all those elements, the bun, The lettuce, all the fixings, and the meats. Those are groceries. But the minute they put it in the oven, now it's a prepared food, and now they have to charge you sales tax. So if you ever look at your receipt in Subway, if you've got it heated, it's taxed. If you don't, it's not. So that's just kind of one of the quirks in California. So there are rules about that. We're going to kind of ignore those rules to get started. So you can do food. Just keep that in mind. That in California, you wouldn't really charge sales tax on your customers and food, but we'll do it because we want to see the sales tax grow. Okay, so it's break time. It's 6:52 right now. So we'll say at 7:02 we'll come back and we'll get started with companies. By the way, anybody comes, if you're attending online, feel free to click the raise your hand or just start chatting. And I keep an eye on it. Careful what you say because everybody's watching you. But if you do have any questions, feel free to interrupt as we go along. So you'll also need this invitation here. And then I'm going to set you up. If this works. Oh, restrooms, by the way. We do have a restroom here if you want to use one in here. Or as you walked in by that gate, there are the main restrooms. So we do have two options.
If you park over there, but the gal said that you can park over here, so it's on in street or?
Yeah, there's two parking lots. The one over here, it doesn't have that many slots, but that's available. And then you have to it's always a maze. There's no way around a maze. So it's either a maze this way or a maze that way. But you just come through the gates, and it's the early intervention and the young kids. So they have lots of gates, little segmented areas. So you have to come to about 2 or 3 gates. But as soon as you walk up, you'll see the building and just work the way through the gates till you get here. And then I always close it behind me because they say to, just in case.
So there's no one that's easier than.
Not really. I don't think so. But I will say on this area, we had 2 rabbits last year that were just free rabbits. I think it was some kid's FFA project that got loose. But they said, no, they're there. And they weren't tame, but they were pretty relaxed about somebody being around. But if you got too close, they take off. And I haven't seen them yet because I know there are cats around here too. So I don't know if that has anything to do with each other. I hope not. Okay, can I get your name and email?
It's Tricia Schmieden.
Can you spell it, please?
SHI MIEU. And
Mhm.
my first name is spelled TRICIA.
TRICI, got it. And the email?
email, it's tshimizu@patterson.k12.ca.us.
Okay. Okay, so I just sent the invitation. Who knows how long it'll take to get there, but and then that'll have the link that we're going to use when we get back. Did you get it? Okay. My email takes like an hour sometimes.
I hope not.
Yeah, it shouldn't. With the internet, the funny thing is, we're a couple feet away. The message itself might go halfway around the world and come back before you get it. So your email is tshinizu@patterson.k12.ca.us.
SHI, what's T? Oh, M.
Oh.
It's M.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Let's just do this.
So that's why I'm not getting it.
That makes sense. That's why I wanted to double check.
Okay, thank you.
I think what I'll do is just start over.
Yeah. SHI M.
M as in Mary?
Mhm,
Okay.
IZU. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, and it's T. Mhm.
Yeah.
They're almost.
Like that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's do that. And
Together.
Yeah.
Tina, what is it, Guilt?
Mhm.
She said she was saying gonna be able to do this one,
Okay.
so she just wanted to know how could she like, sign out.
Yeah, I'll take her out.
Oh,
So easy. Back to do it right now.
thank you, I got it.
Okay, good. That's the advantage of free classes. There's no cost to drop. And we've had people, halfway through, they can't finish, something comes up, so they can take it again. And we'll offer it again in the spring. So the way it'll work is we have the beginning, first 3 weeks, then the advanced. Then we switch over to Microsoft Office, and again, that's free. But that's a 6-week class. and we focus on Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Then we start over again with the beginning class, and then the advanced class, and then Microsoft Office. And you can take it more than once. Sometimes people say, I know, now I know more. Can I take it again? But that's also why we send out those videos. You get to keep them forever. They're posted on YouTube. The way it works is they're private, meaning the only way to get to it is to know the link. And the link goes to the emails. So meaning, we don't broadcast it to the world, but as long as YouTube stays in business, and they're owned by Google, so that means they're probably there forever, those videos will stay up there, and you can always go back to it, even a year from now if you want to go back. Sometimes people will go through the class, and at the end, now they're much more familiar with things. They like to go back to the beginning videos because now they have a better understanding of what's going on. So you can always use it as a resource in case you ever get stuck with something like, I think we did something like that in class. We don't teach Access in this class, but we have done that before. And we had one student, he went to, it's a nonprofit, and they were using Microsoft Excel, a spreadsheet, to keep track of all their clients who donate money to them. And it was long. I mean, it was thousands. So they hired him, and the first task they gave him was to convert that into Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access is a database program, much more powerful. Excel is great. I'm not trying to say Excel is bad, but for something like that, you definitely want to have Access or some other database program. So he remembered that we had a lesson in class where you had to convert Excel to Access. And so he made a little dummy copy to experiment with, and it took about half an hour. He figured it out. So he did it. He said, okay, I'm done. And he said, what? You're done? You sure? Let me see. They wanted to see. Okay, how'd you do that? He said, what? We had a lesson in class, and I just did what we learned in class. We thought it was going to take you like 3 days. So I said, yeah, maybe you should have dragged it out a bit and made it sound like, well, I got a headache over it, but it was worth it, something. Make it a little more dramatic. Not, oh, that was easy. Got anything else? Yeah, you're fired. You just worked yourself out of a job. All right, so we are back from break. So make sure everybody's seeing my email. So this is my accept invitation email. I'm going to click on it. And this is the first step to setting up your online account. So one thing it's going to ask you for is a password. And all the standard password rules apply, meaning you're going to have letters, numbers, and punctuation. And they do that. And the idea is trying to make it hard to guess. So does it work? What happens? People come up with these passwords, so you got to write them down somewhere because everything has a different password. Well, the minute you write it down, now you just defeated one of the big things about passwords. So you just made it less secure, but there's no way around it. We have a government agency we work with, federal government. Their rule is every 60 days you have to change your password. It's a 13-character password. The rule is you can't use any common words, like the. If THE shows up anywhere, that's a common word, don't use it. And you can't have any portion of your password Okay, there's another one. This is the direction. It's a really fun one. You should see how it's into education.
password we use?
Yes. Yeah. So for the class, okay, my philosophy is I have my important passwords and the not so important passwords. Not so important passwords, I don't make it so complicated. So if you're just going to use this for class, you use an unimportant password, something simple to remember. If you're going to use it for business, I'd put a couple exclamation points or something in there to make it where people couldn't guess it. So your username is your email account. And then you can make up a password.
Our business, depending on who as basic book.
Right now, you can use a basic bookkeeping. We're actually going to rename it as we go through the steps. When we start, although I ran into a little snag here, it's called the easy